And so let us begin the program here. Leona, if you have a pitch to give for the Pre-Law Student Association, do you want to do it now, or you want to try to hold off for a few minutes before doing it?
If we could wait just 2 more minutes in case anyone trickles in, and then we can get started.
Okay. All right. Very good. And so let me just say that for those of you who don't know me, I'm Brad Roth. I'm a jointly appointed faculty member in the Department of Political Science and the law school. And one of the things that I tend to do around here is to bring back my former students who are off in various places doing interesting things and have them enlighten students who are currently here. And so it's a great honor to have this collection of students who are in law schools all over the country. And so you'll be able to get a wide range of experiences of people who've gone out of town to pursue their law degrees in all different kinds of institutions. And so we'll have an opportunity to hear from each of them, and we'll let them all each introduce themselves when we get going with all of that. Um, and what more can I say by way of introduction, other than that, I'm a recovering lawyer, as they say. I'm someone who went back to school for 5 years to make half his salary. And so I'm available to people who are interested in learning more about law and legal studies. And so welcome anyone to reach out to me at any point to have conversations about those kinds of issues. And I teach courses, a range of courses in legal studies, domestic and international, as well as theoretical. Currently teaching international law and political theory of public law this semester, but various other related courses in the future. And so now we have reached 7:05, so I filibustered to the appropriate moment. And so now we will hear a few words from the Pre-Law Student Association. Leona, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Dr. Roth. And I'm really glad for those of you that are on. I know you didn't get to meet him last semester, but it's lovely to get to know him this semester. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Leona. I'm one of the Pre-Law Student Association board members. I do want to take this moment to thank both Dr. Roth and the panelists for taking their time to put this on for us. As a pre-law student org, we try to host a variety of events that will guide students through their journeys, their law school application process. So the information and the advice that you're about to receive tonight is invaluable to us. So we're really happy to have you all here. We'll be hosting more events this semester similar to this, so please stay tuned. Connect with us through our Instagram at Wayne State PLSA. And without further ado, let's get started. So if the panelists want to go ahead and introduce themselves one by one.
Why don't we go in the alphabetical order of the list? So Ali, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I can start us off. So my name is Allie. I'm a first-year law student at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, Wisconsin right now. Of course, I attended undergrad at Wayne State. I believe I started in 2018 and I graduated in December of 2022. I majored in criminal justice and I'm double minored in law and English. If you're not already doing the minor in law program, definitely do it. It was super fun and I think super helpful for my journey to law school.
Okay, Stuart.
Hey folks, my name is Stuart Baum. I use he, him pronouns. I am a 1L at NYU in New York City, and I graduated Wayne State University in 2020 in May. I just had like a couple months of Zoom University. I studied public affairs as my major, and I minored in criminal justice. There was no law minor at that time. Nice to have y'all.
Ian.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So I graduated Wayne State 2018. I had a major in political science and a minor in philosophy. Currently I'm going to law school in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's Lincoln Memorial University, and then that's in like Harrogate, Tennessee, and then their law school is Duncan School of Law, and that's in downtown Knoxville. Um, but yeah, studying them. I'm a 2L, sorry.
Okay, Marcella.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marcella Eid. I'm a 3L at WSU Law in St. Louis, Missouri. A lot of people confuse it with Washington State or Washington, D.C., but WSU Law is in St. Louis, pretty much in the middle of the country. I graduated from Wayne State May 2021, which feels like forever ago. And I majored in political science, and I did this last year as well, so it's great to be back and to see everybody.
Ollie.
Hello, everybody. My name's Oliver or Ollie. I went to Wayne State University for undergrad, and I grew up in the area. I graduated in 2021 with my political science degree. Then I worked at a legal aid for a couple years, and I am a 1 law at Gonzaga Law School, hoping to graduate in 2027. And I live in Spokane, Washington now.
And finally, Marie.
Hi everyone, my name is Marie Portez. I am a 3L at NYU Law, though I did transfer from Wayne Law, so I did my 1L year at Wayne Law. And yeah, I graduated from Wayne State University in 2022, and I majored in political science with a minor in history.
So I guess the first question to throw out there is what led you to the law school that you ended up at? What attracted you to the particular institution that you're at, but also what was the process of getting in, and how you went about the process of approaching the application to law school? Anyone want to start?
I mean, I can start us off. So I graduated from Wayne State, and then, I always knew that I wanted to take the LSAT and to go to law school and everything. And so what I did that really helped me is I researched a few law schools that I was interested in. And I was kind of interested in like state schools kind of all around the country. I was definitely thinking of, coming back to Michigan and continuing my career there. And so I kind of researched their, stats and what they required as far as LSAT and everything. And then I kind of got those numbers down and kind of studied for the LSAT based off of that to know if I was prepared. So that's kind of how I approached the application process. I know some people apply to like 20 plus. I applied to, I think, like 8. And then I know people who applied to 1. I know people who applied to 2. So it's really about what you're comfortable with. And I chose UW because I would say also tour as many as you can. It can be really time consuming. It can cost some money, but tour as many as you can because that does help you get a feel for the school. And I toured UW and it just really felt like a good atmosphere. And I mean, Madison is just a gorgeous city. So, and I knew I wanted to be somewhere that I felt good in because I was going to spend 3 years here and possibly build the rest of my career here. And I also really liked how many clinical opportunities we have here at UW because I'm a really hands-on learner, so they have a ton of opportunities for that. Another big pull for UW for me is we have something in Wisconsin called diploma privilege. So basically, if I take certain classes and I stay practicing in the state of Wisconsin, I don't have to take the bar exam. So that was definitely a good thing for me.
Who else needs to go?
I took a different approach to the application process. I applied to pretty much all the top schools, and then, of course, Wayne State. I was really trying to aim for like a top 20 school. And the reason why I chose WashU was because honestly, I got a really good scholarship. And once they got that information to me, I did more research about the school, and I saw that they have really good connections to areas that cities that I was probably interested in moving to at the time. They have a lot of connections to Chicago. They have people in Michigan as well. And for me, it was really between like staying like in Detroit or Chicago. And I knew that if I went to WashU, that those doors would be open to me, no matter what I chose. And so I came here, and sure enough, I saw that, yeah, the community is as large as they say around the country, not just in those two cities that I'm interested in. And also, I did some research about the student body, and I saw that the WashU Law student body is more collaborative than competitive. And from my almost 3 years here, I could say that that's 100% true. And I've been really liking my experience so far.
Who else?
Yeah, similar to Marcella, yeah, scholarships played a big role for me in the process, just figuring out, what was the way to save the most money. And also similarly, the cities that I enjoy, checking out the city of the various law schools and seeing which ones I could envision myself for 3 years or more. And so that played a big part in my decision making. And like Ali was saying, campus tours are a huge, huge help to coming to a decision. I think that it's a great way to sort of get a feel for the school and the environment and the space that you're going to be studying in, and to take, as many campus tours as you can for the schools you're interested in, for sure. And also the law school websites too, they'll sometimes have like student life or like a mission statement. And, not just for like the application process and like when you're making your personal statement, kind of having it coincide with what they're looking for in their students. Like it's a two-way, street where you're also looking at a school that fits for you and like somewhere that you envision having fun at and enjoying the experience.
A few other considerations that I was thinking about when I was in your shoes or shortly after where you're at right now. All my life was in the Metro Detroit area and then Detroit for school. But the job I got out of in right after graduating undergrad was here in New York, and that's what brought me here. And then I worked here for about 4 years before going back to school. And so I really loved the community that I had built and found here. And so I was really torn between Michigan or New York, but was interested in both. And I've been working and I'm interested in continuing to work in either voting rights and labor. And NYU has, centers, classes, clinics in both of those buckets. And also, both of those fields are within public interest, and they have a really big community of students that do public interest, both like in during their time in law school and then also afterwards. And I really didn't want to go some place where, I was one of like 10 students that was going down this path, and, fighting to get into some kind of course or try to find some kind of faculty mentor. I wanted to go someplace that had more of that infrastructure.
So similar to Stuart, I think a big draw for me at NYU was I'm a public interest student. I'm going into public defense. NYU has very robust public interest law centers is the name, that really just makes it very easy to get into those fields. And it also has LRAP. I think looking into LRAP, it's loan repayment assistance programs across various different schools have different programs. I think they're all named LRAP though. And they can help you with loan repayment if you're taking on heavy loans. I originally chose Wayne Law because scholarship and because it had excellent ties with the public defense community in Detroit. And as time went on, I realized that I definitely wanted to get out of Michigan. And that's where I think you have to know if you want to be regional or if you want to go have more, like Michelle was saying, be able to jump around cities because regional schools will place you very well within that region. And then but it may be harder to go across the country. And I knew that I didn't really have ties in Michigan, so I wanted that opportunity. I think I also want to plug lsd.law, which is a website that has a lot of information about different schools and their admissions process, and like a lot of numbers and data that was very helpful to me, and also law school transparency. They also have a ton of information, and it can streamline the whole process of application. I think LSD also has like a whole thing where you can see when people start getting acceptances and rejections, so you can kind of know what's going on, and track. It has a tracker thing that will automatically check for you whether your status has been updated at any of the schools, so that you don't have to log in and check yourself. Which when you're applying to like, I think I applied to 15 schools the first time, and then for transfer I applied to a high number as well. Logging in individually is a pain. So
Ian, I think you're the last one to be heard from.
Yeah, so I have a lot of similar things as all the others. I mean, obviously scholarship's a big one when you're like looking for school, because you have to be able to afford like living, and if your school allows you to work during 1L, which I don't think there are many that allow you to do that. Like you have to be able to have to deal with that. And then me, like I grew up my entire life in Michigan, so it's like this might be one of the last times that I have to like go somewhere else. So I wanted to check out an area that's kind of completely different, I guess, than Detroit, but still, it's still like Sixth Circuit, still kind of similar. But it's a booming market. Um, and it was high interest to me. And then similar to what Marcella said, where if you actually like talk to the students, it's not like super competitive. I mean, you still have to follow the curve and all that, but it's not competitive, and people work together and support one another, and it makes the atmosphere 20 times better than if it's just people competitive, like trying to like cut each other off. So it's super inviting, and then meeting with the different professors at the school, like they have the same goal of like promote, like you feel like they're trying to get you to be like a part of, I guess, the lawyer club, if you will, where they're trying to make you a professional, trying to like basically once you become barred and you're practicing, they want to like you're an equal to them, and like you're an offset of them. So it's like super supportive, and you can go to them for anything. And I just love it. So it makes it more enjoyable and not as stressful, I guess you could say.
So many of you have spoken to this to one extent or another, but perhaps with more focus, one might deal with the question of what you did as an undergrad to prepare yourself for both the application to law school, but also law school itself. What sorts of things did you do that you think have turned out to be helpful to you? What sorts of things do you wish you had done in retrospect that you didn't manage to do leading up to this experience? What sort of reflections do you have about the transition from being an undergraduate to being a law student? Anybody?
Something I definitely wish I did more of was be active in clubs and organizations for undergrad. Granted, my senior year and half of my junior year was COVID year, so everything was online and things like that. But taking advantage of it for my freshman and sophomore year, and still making it, trying to be involved. I think it's really helpful for law school applications. And it doesn't have to be a club or organization in the school. You can also, do work that you think you would be interested in law school to kind of see the work environment and what the day-to-day life is. I thought that was really helpful. Yeah.
I think something I really enjoyed in undergrad that you don't get a ton of in law school is in undergrad you get such an opportunity to explore all these different interests. And I think um looking back, it is a beautiful thing that you can major in anything you want and still apply to law school. And I think taking that time to really develop yourself as like a whole human being before like putting yourself through like the meat grinder of law school, that's going to like teach you to think and process things in a very specific way, is good. And it adds to like the diversity of perspectives that you get in law school. So I didn't really know that I was going to apply to law school when I was undergrad, which I think I'm happy about because it allowed me to not be so focused on, okay, I need to take XYZ classes in order to be prepared, so easy way, for law school and to like explore more.
One
Well-
thing that I'm really glad I did was take a gap year, actually. Kind of what Marie was saying, like you like to kind of develop yourself as a person before, you know, putting yourself through something like law school. And I really feel like it gave me a chance to really mature a little bit and just really prepare myself and give myself some time away from school and do something fun. Like you also just taking that year, because like when you're in law school, like especially 1L 2L, I mean you do not have much free time. And so during my gap year, actually, like I took on a fun job. I worked at a bridal boutique. I sold wedding dresses basically. And the amount of times that has actually come up in my interviews is insane. So yeah, also during undergrad, like getting involved on campus and doing student orgs and taking leadership positions, it's great because like you really never know how that could help you in a job interview and make you really stand out and make you unique, even if it's not law related.
Would say,
Other thought?
oh,
Yep.
I would say for me, I guess I wish I would have tried like different areas of law, like try different internships, try and like focus on where you're at. Because when I graduated, I worked for 3 years in like basically debt collection law, um, which you gain like I gained a lot of experience because it was like multi-state and that, but I didn't have much interest in that. And so going into law school, like I was like, I don't know, do I want to do like criminal defense, like personal injury, like medical mal? Like I was like, I don't know. So I wish I would have done just more internships and like gotten more experience beforehand.
I worked at a law firm for quite a while when I was in undergrad at Wayne State. And so I think it's very important, like what type of areas may interest you, what their day-to-day might look like. Is it a type of environment that you're interested in being in? I feel like after working in a law firm, I kind of knew what I was getting myself into. And so I felt more prepared than maybe some other people, especially talking to my friends like during 1L or even 2L. But something that I wish I did more before coming to law school was forming healthy habits. I think that's really important. Something like meal prepping, figuring out really easy meals to make in abundance, because like others have said, you're not going to really have that much time, especially during your first year. And so I think it's really important to start building healthy habits and having like routines down that could just make your life easier when your life gets really busy.
I wasn't paid to say this, but I loved the American Law and Legal Systems class that I took with Brad Roth. I definitely thought it was helpful. I spent a lot of time, before and then during and after undergrad, thinking that I did want to do law, but also being open to maybe not doing law. And that class was really helpful in hindsight because it really helped me dip my toes in the water, get some kind of familiarity to reading a case and what that kind of world would look like. And that definitely helped me, in 1L. And also plus one to Ian and Marcy's points. I had one of my summers in undergrad, I interned in the Washington County Public Defender's Office, and that was like good experience that like helped my application and also helped me realize that I didn't want to go down that route. And now I don't have to, spend a 1L summer doing that to figure that out.
So law school classes are obviously very different from undergraduate classes, and you've experienced all of you at this point the horror of the winner-take-all exam at the end of the semester. Most law school courses are based pretty much 100% on an exam at the end of the course, which is very different from what people would have experienced as undergrads. So I'm wondering what people's experiences have been with law school exams, how to study in law school, given the fact that that's how a law school class is organized, and what sort of experiences you've had in that regard.
Yeah, I think finals, well, I've only taken, one semester of finals so far, and I think studying for it includes like outlining, and law school is very reading heavy. It's a little bit more reading oriented. You'll get assigned certain amount of pages to read before class. And I think that was the biggest adjustment for me from undergrad. Um, there are, courses like Brad's. I took his justice course in undergrad, which was pretty, there was readings as well. And similarly, they, talked about similar things in those courses. So I think it's important to also, to the previous point, to stay curious in undergrad, because you'd be surprised what subjects or things in different courses come up throughout your academic career in law school. But yeah, it's an adjustment in I would say how much you're reading, how much you have to rely on independent studying. And, some great ways are outlining and building like study groups, putting those together and discussing with your classmates the subjects that you guys discuss in lectures. Yeah, that's what I think the biggest difference has been so far.
People make use of study groups.
Yeah, I think study groups actually were a huge part of my 1L year at least. My 2L and 3L year, I have avoided classes that have winner take all exams and tried to stick to papers and simulation courses um, as much as I can. But that 1L year, you just can't avoid the exams. And I think having people that you can check in with regularly, and even for me, it was a lot of just sitting in the library and reading. But having someone else there so that you're not on your phone, which is my biggest problem, having that accountability is very, very helpful. Outlines, there's outline banks, there's a lot of things out there. There's podcasts were really big for me. Having like huge cases presented to me in a way that was less academic and more fun was a big deal, especially in constitutional law. Um, and I think the main thing is realizing that you're entering a space where it's not like undergrad where there's going to be like a test every couple weeks and maybe like a reading assignment to make sure you're doing the reading. It's very much self-regulated. If you want to just not read for the whole semester, you might screw up some cold calls. That's not really going to impact your grade. But it's going to impact your grade when you get to the final. So you have to be the one that kind of keeps yourself on track and that manages that workload, because there's not as much outside checks. And I think that's something that can be a little bit intimidating if you're not used to it, going in.
Yeah, I have been humbled. I'm a semester in. I think for me in undergrad, I really I did a lot of both studying on my own and then also study groups, and I found both helpful in different circumstances. Here so far, kind of like Marie said, I like studying with other people, but I'm doing like my own thing though. But we're all in it together. And I found it really helpful to like try to stay as on top of the reading as you can, just because you fall one class behind, it's so hard to catch back up. And I would, through the semester, like I put all of my notes in one document that was for my readings and coming to class. And so I already had kind of like my own almost outline by the end of the semester that I then just synthesized rather than like starting really from scratch. And yeah, like Marie said, utilize other like outline banks, utilize other people's outlines. Like this is not you're not the first person to have to learn towards. And it's very learnable as long as you like really allow like submit yourself to this process.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Stuart said. Like you're all kind of going through it together, but a big part of law school is kind of learning how you learn. And so you really kind of have to know yourself. Like me, for example, I know I can't, like right now I'm like in one of our little study rooms that you can book in the library. And I know that I can't do this with like friends and sitting here. I know that we're going to talk and talk and talk. I need to be up in the quiet area where I'm forced to shut up, or a librarian's going to yell at me, or else I'm just going to talk to my friends. For me, doing a ton of practice exams was super helpful. I don't know how other schools do it, but I know that like my professors, they usually like the library will have kind of a database of past exams, and sometimes your professors will upload some of their past exams into Canvas, and then we'll also upload like an answer key. So if they do that, like really study those answer keys in depth. I mean, that's like, I would say doing a practice exam is a full day's work. It take about 3 hours to do the exam and then additional 3 hours to do that. So really outlining ahead. And I did the exact same thing as Stuart. I recommend just putting all your notes in one doc and then shortening it. You have to shorten it, or else like my contracts outline literally would have been like 100 pages long. So that's what really worked for me. And so you just kind of learn that as you go and kind of pay attention to how you memorize concepts and what's kind of working for you.
I want to also say that pretty much what everybody has said is like also my experience. I do like working with people, but specifically in the quiet area. I mean, my friends would just, because we will talk sometimes. So we're like, let's work in this quiet area so we know we can't talk to each other, but we have somebody with us like working. And so that's really helpful in condensing everything into one outline. Totally agree with that. One thing I do want to say is, because especially during your first year, everybody's going to be maybe doing things differently. What might work for somebody might not work for you. Even if it works for a lot of people, it might not work for you. And so I feel like even now as a 3L, even throughout 2L, I felt like I was still finding ways that, worked for me when it came to learning information or learning how I like my notes. And so you don't need to have it all figured out your first semester, not even your second semester. But my biggest advice would be figure out what works for you and focus on you. Just because something else is popular among people, you might feel some aggravation if you find out it's not working for you, but you have time to figure that out. And so I just say, don't put too much pressure in the beginning to be like, everybody's doing it this way, so I must do it this way. And then I'm doing it this way, but I feel like it's not working for me. Then change it. Figure out what works for you.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, mine's kind of similar to everybody else. You have to find like what works for you. So like studying groups doesn't work for me because I'm like super ADHD. So I have to like lock in and it has to be like completely silent. So I remember last year during my first semester, it's like so much material coming at you at once. Like how do you absorb it all? And luckily for me, I don't know if other schools do this, but like my school will record the lecture so you can watch it back. So I have my briefs in like one section, or one Word doc, and then I have my outline in the other, and then I go through.
explain what a brief is.
You break that, so when you're reading a case, basically you have to break it down into uh like what are the facts of the case, like what's the analysis, what's the court's coming to, what the district court say, was it appealed, what the Supreme Court, like that kind of thing, and how they reached the conclusion, and then you're trying to draw rules from that. And then the rules are what basically you'll use on the exam. Uh, yeah, learning to brief is a whole thing. So I guess that was new too. Um, but I had my briefs and I just keep those because my school cold calls like crazy. And if you don't do the reading, you'll get kicked out of the class. And uh with the ABA, like if you miss so many classes, then like you'll fail the class. So it's very high pressure and there's some professors that make you stand. and do it, which is interesting. But it's definitely like you can't go all semester without reading or you won't pass the class. And then, but basically like it's so much information coming to me at once. I build an outline, but I'm old school, and so I have to write everything by hand, and I have 1.0 uh pens, and I just write, and I have everything color coordinated. So it's like, was it on the PowerPoint? Did the professor say this? Is it a note? I break everything down, and that's how I absorb it. And I would say the first half of first semester, I was just like, this is so much. Uh, I don't know what to do. And like the school has so many resources. You're like, do I use this one? Do I use that? So like go to your professors, see what they like, and then you can kind of bounce off that. There's one where it gives you like 10 questions every day, and then you like mark how well you do it. And then if you did it well, it will give you a new one, won't give you that, and it keeps going. But it's just like you find the resources that work for you. But yeah, it's it was a adjustment from undergrad for me. So
Part of what you said leads into the next question that I was going to ask, which is about the classroom environment itself. And this concept of cold calling is certainly going to be new to most undergrads. So what's that like? Different professors do it in different ways, and you can actually get, I guess, put on the spot for in some places. Well, you can say, are you put on the spot for 20 minutes at a time? As one individual, or people just do your professors just go around the room and surprise people, or or in some cases are students signed up to be on call for particular days and know that they're not going to be called on days that they're not on call? How do these things work for you, and what is that atmosphere like in class?
Yeah, it's for those that don't know, cold calling is when the professor will have a question, maybe about a case or the reading or just a general question, and they'll, instead of somebody raising their hand and answering, they'll call on somebody, whether they have their hand up or not. And they've done it a few different ways at my school, just in these 2 semesters that I've been attending. And I know that they probably do it many different ways, but they can do it, where they go by the seating chart down the line. I have a professor in properties that does that, so you can kind of foresee what day you're probably going to get called on. So you can kind of, if you're nervous about it, prepare a little more if you know you're going to be cold called. And I have professors that do it at random. They'll put a tick mark next to the person's name on the seating chart so they can kind of distribute it across the class throughout the semester. But we'll kind of just, pick somebody that hasn't been chosen yet. And so there's a little bit less foreseeability there. And as far as like the extent of the questions that you're answering, I've seen various things. Some of the professors just ask one question, move along. It could be a multiple choice, or it could be kind of a deeper analytical question. And they can keep you there for a couple, or have a follow-up question to what your first answer was. And then you're there for a couple of minutes. And that's like my criminal law course right now. My professor will sort of call on somebody to answer a question, and you have to sort of stick with him through the discussion, which is really cool. You have some insights that come to you that maybe wouldn't typically come when you're having, when you're coming up with an answer in isolation. But yeah, it can be a little nerve-wracking if I haven't experienced it before, but you have to remind yourself that everybody else is also nervous and in a similar place as you at that given time. And that, if you're doing your best with the reading and give it your best effort, typically the professor is okay with it, even if you get it wrong. They might, if you get it wrong, ask another question and keep asking you questions until you get something right. And so that's a little bit of pressure too. If you haven't done the reading, it can really, double down on you that it becomes more and more apparent as the questions keep coming. But yeah, I've seen various things. I'm sure that there are other ways as well.
I think it's really professor dependent. At least at WashU it is. I have professors who just literally one after another pick a student for maybe like one question and then move on to somebody else. Or I have one professor, my torts professor specifically would dedicate one class to one student. So you would have to teach like all the cases that you had to read that day. And that when you were called that day, you were shaken a little bit. But I also have professors who maybe like put names on a board. So when you walk in, you saw like today's the day you're going to get called. But I even have some professors that don't cold call, but the professors that don't cold call, that's usually like 2L, 3L professors, usually at least over here, first year, all the professors are cold calling. I will say though, at first it was very like anxiety inducing. I didn't like it. I hated cold calling. I always like would sit in class and be like, oh, I hope I don't get cold called today, even if I was like prepared. You do get used to that. Don't let it control your thoughts in class because like when you're in class, you need to be paying attention. You shouldn't be thinking, I hope I'm not getting called. I hope I'm not getting called. And so I would say like at first, I'm like nobody's gonna blame you if you have anxiety about it, but it does get better with time. And if you find yourself still like feeling some type of way about it, just try to train yourself because you're gonna have to deal with it. But as a 3L, I would say that like right now, none of my classes cold call because I think like as Marie said, there's like classes that aren't 100% just like one test. And so I feel like those classes are more based on like random participation as you will. But those are usually classes that you can like take later. But 1L year, I would say just be ready for them. And also something that everybody says, which I think is true, nobody remembers your cold call. So if you think, oh my God, I just had a really bad cold call, I sounded stupid, nobody was paying attention to you thinking that you sounded stupid or they're not going to remember it. So don't be too worried about like people perceiving you just when you're called on. Just focus on what the professor is asking you and answer to the best of your ability. And don't worry about everybody looking at you or how you're being perceived. Like nobody remembers a bad cold call. It's fine.
It's also, of course, the exams are typically blind graded in first year exams, so you shouldn't feel as though you have made a fool of yourself in front of your professor and it's going to undermine your grade. Although if you do well, I guess there's also typically a bump up of grade for people who have been effective participants in class.
If I could add like kind of a more global point on this and the grade question from earlier, I think there, and this is my experience, is only my experience, but this is also my sense of talking to people who've gone to other schools. And there is unfortunately like an aspect to the way law school is structured, like that is a kind of like hazing culture, a kind of like that's just part of the experience. And I think, going into it, you have to decide like what you want to prioritize, what you want to get out of this experience. Because I think, you know, to some people want to prioritize and work really hard to make the grade. Some people want to really prioritize to, come off as a genius in the cold call. You can't do it all, and you have to figure out like what are your goals? We're coming to law school because we want to become lawyers. We want to practice the law, and what are the things that you can do in law school to prepare yourself best to reach those goals? One caveat to Marcy's point is that no one's gonna remember a bad cold call, but people do remember good cold calls. Like try to have fun. Like people are like I had a couple iconic moments in cold calls and people are like, "Oh my God, like that was so fun." Like just have fun with it, really. Like we're all trying to learn together and get through this together.
Yeah, I really want to reiterate Stuart and Marcella's points. Yeah, no one's really gonna remember. I actually have like a super hard time talking in front of like huge groups, especially like two of my lectures this semester are like 80 people, and that's just huge. And it terrifies me to like, look stupid in front of everyone. And that's how I felt at the beginning of last semester. I mean, I'll be honest, I completely bombed like my first 3 cold calls in one of my classes, and I was super upset about it. And like nowadays, I'm just kind of like, it sucks, but the professor's really not going to get like mad at you as long as it's clear that you did the reading. The only time when they would really get frustrated is, I mean, again, that is just my experience, but like the ones that randomly cold call, if you don't want to answer the question, you can just say pass and they'll move on. They don't like get mad or anything. The only time they'll get mad is if it is a system where you specifically signed up for that day or that course, and then you get called on, you say, I don't know. Then it's annoying because then you kind of took a spot from someone else to get participation. So to prepare for that, I mean, there's no real way to prepare for the Socratic method, but I would just say, get used to talking in front of people in undergrad and talking in front of the group, because then you might be a little bit more comfortable doing it in general in law school.
Ian, you had
I
been
would
talking about the actual prospect of being exiled from the class if you hadn't done the reading. Tell us about that if you can, along with whatever else you want to tell us.
well, luckily it hasn't happened to me. But I mean, basically the professor's not, I mean, they're looking for how well you understood the material, but if you know the facts of the case to the point where like they can tell that you read, they're not gonna kick you out. But when you're sitting there and you get called on and you don't know anything and you're like searching through your notes that you don't have, or like trying to get a brief, um like that's when they would get upset. But we had all different, so my torts professor was the one that would always kick people out. And he would just cold call it, like it didn't matter all the time. Then I had my crim law professor did a lottery wheel, and so it would spin and your ball came out, so you get called on that way. That was fun. It tended to pick the exact same girl every single time, so she had a very unlucky semester. But she was always prepared. But she would that professor specifically wasn't looking. She was like asking specific questions where I guess like you could answer anyway, and she's kind of looking for your argument versus like um anything else. And then I don't know if any of you have the wheeled names, which professors really like in my school, but it's like Wheel of Fortune has everybody in the class's name, so you get to see it spin, and then it slowly lands on one person, and it just ticks to the next person, and so everybody's like, oh. But no, yeah, like to everybody else's point, like no one's gonna remember like a bad cold call. They will remember a good call, like Stuart said. Um, but yeah, eventually get used to it. It just helps you talk in front of people because a lot of times people will know the answer and they just don't want to raise their hand, or they think it's like a super easy question and so no one's answering the professor. But cold calling just helps with that. And then you can talk in front of everybody and just helps, and you just get used to it. And as long as you're, I guess, like as long as you read the case, you're not going to be super nervous, because if they call on you and you get something wrong, like I mean, you read the case, you know the facts. Like, you might not get the rule right, or you might not get the analysis right, but they can tell that you did the work. You just didn't understand the material, which is what they're there to teach you. So, um, you get used to it, but it is nerve-wracking in the beginning, but you get used to it.
So you've all pretty much spoken positively about your classmates. Do you find that there are classmates that are gunners that are looking to kind of distinguish themselves from other people and engage in kind of obnoxious practices in terms of self-promotion in these classes, or is everyone pretty much all in it together?
Fortunately, I don't have any specific classmates in mind for as far as like feeling like they're almost disturbing, my learning or somebody else's, or competitive to a level where it kind of makes the environment like toxic. Obviously, everybody wants to do their best. Um, and as far as gunners go, I actually kind of like when there's somebody that's, especially if it's like a difficult course that is prepared and has the answers. The professor will kind of naturally look to other people if it seems like one person is kind of answering all the questions or involved on a particular day. So that kind of like remedies it in itself. But honestly, I've really enjoyed everybody that I've met. I didn't expect to have so much fun in class. And you know, I prior to starting law school was incredibly nervous because I heard how rigorous it was, but the community that it builds is incredibly fun and fulfilling. So I fortunately haven't had any experiences with any classmates that have been difficult or problematic so far.
Yeah, I want to echo that. I think that for those who aren't familiar with the term gunner and aren't like chronically online on the law school Reddit, the gunners would be people who not only participate excessively, but participate in a manner that makes it very obvious that they are trying to not only impress the professor, but also maybe put down other students. And they might be the type who like is going to give you a false outline or like not be willing to share notes or something like that. I haven't come across any particularly bad ones. There's people that are very eager to participate. I have been very eager to participate in some classes that I genuinely care about. I think it comes down to being like aware and self-aware of the people around you. And people are really, really try to be nice is what I've seen in law school. We're all kind of like, especially 1L, like everyone's kind of like going through it. Everyone's struggling. No one wants to make it harder on anyone else. And if someone does, then they're weird. And that's, hopefully they find a place for that. I think the best way that I've found to deal with like when I've had people that I don't necessarily like get along with or that I don't particularly enjoy being on a team with, which has happened. I think especially as you get later on, I've been put in simulations and things where I have to work with people where we have differences in maybe how we want to approach a topic, is keeping in mind that you're developing skills that are like not only just the substantive skills, but people skills. Like law is often a very interactive job and you're working on teams with other people. So learning how to allow for differences in opinion and not make that like the end all be all and not make winning and being right like who am I hurting by like needing to be right is something that like I feel like I've really gotten to really sit with and try to work on with myself, and I've seen other people as well do that. So I think that's like something that you can also get to learn.
Plus one to that entirely. I think what was surprising to me, which is actually should have been obvious, is like what you have in common with your classmates is that you're in law school. Like, but other than that, like we come from so many different walks of life, like have different goals, different values. So, and what's hard in 1L is that you're gonna spend hours of every day of every week with the same people. And that, like, I didn't even have that in undergrad, so it's just a lot. But no, I mean, most people are like professional. It's a professional school. And most people are very nice. I think like honestly, there have been like maybe gunner lights or people in the realm, but honestly, I think most of them they're doing it for the love of the game. Like they're enjoying the class, and like sometimes they have interesting things to say, and like I'm here for the ride. But yeah, you have to try to disinvest from that kind of paradigm because that's just not, you don't want that to affect your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, I feel like I've been pretty lucky because I mean, like Marie said, I am chronically online on the law school, right? And some of the gunner stories I hear on there are just absolutely nuts, and I have nothing compared to those. So maybe those are the outliers. Maybe I've just had a really good experience. I mean, every once in a while there'll be a question where you're like that should go to office hours. But I think it is kind of like everyone said, just being self-aware and making sure that you're not kind of taking up a little too much time, or being self-aware of like things that maybe I should personally look into this a little bit more, and then if I don't find the answer there, I'll kind of go back to the professor, or I can take this to office hours. I guess like the one thing that I have seen, I mean, people for the most part are very professional. Sometimes in classes like crim or con law, sometimes things can be a little, people can have some different opinions. It can be a little debatey. Just do not don't make it a debate with your classmates. Just kind of state your idea, state your thought, and then move on, because that's when people will kind of be like, that's not good luck.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I wanted to ask you about. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say I haven't really experienced any. I didn't even know the term gunner, but I mean, people can tell just based off your responses in class, like if you know what you're doing or not, and like yeah, we haven't had anyone that's like that I can think of that's like specifically trying to like outsmart everyone or anything like that. I think they just kind of stay in their lane, I guess. I don't know.
So in universities generally, you have student groups and activities and all sorts of things that are extracurricular. And in law school, that takes on a rather different flavor in that so many extracurricular activities are connected to future career possibilities. And so particularly for people who have been, it's a little bit harder for people who are just finishing their first semester of law school, but for people who've been in law school longer, what sort of activities have you participated in? Have you seen as being valuable to other people? How should people approach the idea of extracurricular or really in some sense co-curricular activities in law school, looking ahead to legal careers?
I'm a part of a journal. For those of you who aren't familiar with what a journal is, after your first year of law school, there's a competition called the Write-On competition. And basically, it's a bunch of 1Ls competing for a spot on a journal. And at WashU, we have the flagship, the Law Review, and then some like secondary journals, which I'm a part of. And basically, there's publications that just get published, and it's your job as a member of journal to look at those publications, make sure that they are formatted correctly and they follow the legal citation rules. You're going to learn something called the Blue Book. Mostly helpful for especially litigators. And so I would say if you already know, like you want to go into litigation, definitely join a journal, try to get onto Law Review or a secondary journal if your school offers that. Because I mean, yes, it's work, but you're learning the skills that you're gonna have to be using later down in life for your profession. And also, like I formed some friendships on my journal with people that weren't in my sections during 1L. Because like we have offices at WashU for like each journal, and it's nice to like go in there, see who's in there, talk to people. And so I would say joining a journal after your first year, do the write-on competition, is something that's very valuable. And I served as a teaching assistant for legal writing, which I thought was really nice. I would recommend if there was a subject that clicked with you, reaching out to a professor to see if maybe you can TA, if that's an opportunity that, they offer. I would say take it up. You get to, meet students a year below you and, give them type of mentorship and form relationships with them. And I think stuff like that is really valuable just for the overall community of your guys' law school.
Sure.
I was gonna say that we have like mock trial or moot court. So mock trial would be like an actual like you go and do either a criminal or civil trial and you like kind of you work as either the prosecutor or defense attorney and then they'll go to competitions which I'm not on that team, but my buddy is. So they'll do that and they actually go to Detroit. They compete in Detroit at their mock trial competition. Or there's moot court, you could do appellate briefs and like practice speaking to like an appellate judge panel, which my school they'll actually go to the appellate court and put their briefs or try and put their briefs in front of the actual appellate judges. Um, or we have Kimsley Cup, which is like a full competition between the school from 1L to 3Ls. 2Ls and 3Ls can be attorneys, and the 1Ls can either be jury or witnesses. And so they run that every year, and it's like a chance to get involved with everyone, get to know people, you interact with different people. Usually the attorneys pick their partners, but witnesses and jury get assigned randomly. But it's just good for meeting people, good for experience, good for talking in front. They get judges from all over like the Tennessee area, and they'll come in and actually like hear your case, give you comments, give you feedback, like what you did right, what you did wrong, tell you you're being like too assertive, or um like just basically give you feedback. But it's good experience.
I like Michelle, was also on a journal. I was on law review. We just finished last week. It was one of the worst experiences of my life. So don't do it if you don't need to do it. I did it because it felt like the thing you're supposed to do. And I'm glad that it'll be on my resume. But it was like a very unpleasant experience. I think that's different for everyone, and I think that all of these extracurriculars, especially like the student groups may require less of a commitment, but things like law review, moot court, mock trial are really big commitments. And people are counting on you. So it's not like you can join and then back out when if it's too much. So you should really think through whether it's something that's interests you and is also going to be helpful for your career. Law review is very helpful if you want to go into certain types of corporate law and academia. I have an eye for academia, but I'm going to public defense, so it wasn't really that helpful. And overall, I might be I would advise to really think through like and not overextend yourself by signing up for a ton of stuff. Um, I think I was in the criminal law society, my 1L year. I really liked that. I feel like I really connected with like-minded people there. And I did an advocacy project this past year where we connected with people at Rikers who were and helped transmit their stories of like the
Say what Rikers is.
Rikers is the New York City jail that's currently like getting taken over by the feds because they can't comply with the Constitution and they don't give people showers or like proper conditions whatsoever. So we were helping put together people's stories to present to the boards that are overseeing that kind of their compliance with the Constitution that's not really happening. And I thought I got a lot out of that. I really wish that I'd been able to do a little bit more stuff like that. Um, I feel like I said mean things about law review. I just last weekend I spent 20 hours in the law review room, 10 hours each day because we were doing selections. So take that with a grain. So that was last weekend. I think if you ask me 3 weeks from now, I'll be like, law review is not that bad. Um, but consider what you're gonna take, and make choices based off of like your capacity. Don't overextend yourself.
To say that the reason why people join law review, even though it's miserable, is that it represents something like an honor society within the law school, particularly the flagship law journal. And particularly if you are going to be applying for judicial clerkships, which can be a very important stepping stone for certain kinds of careers, especially in litigation. It's very helpful to be have that kind of journal experience and have that on your resume. So that's why people compete to be on it. And it does attract the most gunner type people, I would say, to the flagship law review, particularly because those are general purpose law reviews. There are other law reviews that are about specialty topics. And those attract people who are really interested in civil rights or in international law or environmental law or something like that. But the main law review is a general purpose law review, and it mostly serves as a credentialing device. Yeah.
That's why I joined my global studies law review, my secondary one.
Yeah.
So exactly what he said.
Yeah.
I was just gonna add from the 1L perspective that, I think I had mentioned earlier, in law school there are clinics that you can take in your 2L and 3L year, which are basically, real world courses where you're actually, doing some kind of practice in the law under the supervision of a faculty member. So it's part like class and part practice. Amazing. I haven't done that yet, but at the 1L level, that and this is not just like an NYU thing. There are like student-run volunteer clinics that you get to do. I'm in this one right now where we're helping trans and non-binary people update their identity documents. But it's just a nice way to like sink your teeth into some kind of legal-ish work, actual client interaction before you get past 1L. 1L can be a little disorienting because you're kind of very detached from practice when you're, especially in some of your, older school doctrine classes. So it's nice to be able to get that kind of experience earlier on if you're interested in that. And I've gotten a lot out of it.
Okay, well, I think we have reached the point where it is time to go to our audience here, and you'll note at the bottom of the Zoom page that there's this little heart-shaped react button there, and within that, you can use the raise hand function to draw attention to yourself. And so those who are interested in asking questions should do so now. Linus.
Hey, how you guys doing? Thank y'all for coming out and putting this on. It's very helpful so far. So a question that I want to ask is when because I've been hearing different time frames. So when would you all say is a good time to really start applying for like law schools?
I can take that if that's okay. I would say you can start applications come online in September. And the sooner you apply for the ones that have rolling admissions, the quicker the higher chance you have of getting into those. I think decisions start being made like November, December at the earliest, and then they roll all the way through March. And sometimes even later, but spots fill up. So if you want to give yourself like the full, and even if you haven't taken, like, I think I took the June or July LSAT and then was going to take it again in October. And you can send in all your all your stuff can be sent in, and you can update them with your LSAT score, and then they'll review your packet as opposed to waiting until you have your LSAT score, just because then you don't want to be rushing looking for recommendation letters, tracking people down, and all that stuff at the last minute.
Okay, thank you. And I guess, and more specifically, like if I'm like right now, I think I'm in my junior year. Would you say that's a good time, or should I wait for like senior sophomore, or I'm sorry, senior year, or how does that work?
I think Allie had mentioned taking a gap year. So if you were to apply I applied the summer after my junior year so that I transitioned right into law school, but I also had taken 3 years of a gap year in the middle of undergrad, which is its own thing, but that's my journey. But I think it is important if you can give yourself, like, if you can afford to take a gap year, I think it's a great thing to do. In which case you get more time because you can wait until graduating and then take the LSAT in the summer and start your applications, and have a little bit more time.
Khalil.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for taking the time to give us this information. Just a question in general, probably for everybody, like how important or how much weight is this essentially the LSAT score? I mean, uh, for these admissions. I mean, because it's like, for example, like I have a good GPA, good letters of recommendation, good experience. It's just hard for me to believe that one test will be kind of like the end all be all. I mean, I'm not trying to get into the top 20 schools, more power to the people that are going to that, but just how generally, how important is that as far as admission goes?
So I can take this one. I mean, it's definitely a big factor, and I will say, like, it does suck that like kind of this one test will kind of be a huge determining factor in your application, and that's why it is nice to build up your application, with other things, because other things can certainly help, and a good GPA is also important. um What I think the LSAT is really, really helpful for and why it's so important is that can also get you really good scholarships. So that's kind of how I viewed it. And so yeah, it can be really important in admissions. I would say definitely, take the time to study really hard. And that's why I recommend kind of looking at the target LSAT score, the median LSAT of the schools you're looking at, and then kind of studying and so that you can kind of know how prepared you are. But yeah, it can really help not only with admissions, but also with scholarships.
And to Allie's point, like the school will award a different amount of scholarship based off if you're in the 25th, 50th, or 75th percentile. And if you're higher above that, with the LSAT, you'll get more and more scholarship. So when you're applying to schools, I mean, it's pretty significant. But it basically changes how much money you're going to get on scholarship.
There's a question in the chat about from Aisa. What resources were the most helpful in studying for the LSAT, and what did your daily study schedule look like? I assume study schedule for the LSAT.
Yeah, I can take this one. There's various resources for studying for the LSAT. I see in the chat Power Score was mentioned. That's a big one. And Seven Sage, I haven't heard of that one, but it sounds good as well. I used it was called LSAT Max at the time. I think it's called like Test Max Prep. Yeah, testmaxprep.com. Those like study programs usually cost a bit of money. And I know that Kaplan is another popular one as well. And I'm trying to think of some others, but yeah, those are some resources you can use. And as far as the study schedule, I did it for like I studied for it throughout the summer, and you have to kind of treat it like a 9 to 5 a little bit, or you don't necessarily have to, but it's recommended to get a few hours in. I can't remember the exact number that was recommended to me, if it was 200 or more, but it's something that you want to be consistent with. It's not an exam that you really want to cram for. And that was, the start of sort of recognizing that it takes some self-discipline throughout the process. But yeah, I used TestMax Prep, and it was great. You can get physical books or online resources.
Lil?
Yeah, another question. How important is networking when it comes to law school? I mean, or is it just in a sense like, can you just necessarily stand out academically in that kind of environment? Or it's kind of like not necessarily what you know, it's who you know at the end of the day, or how much truth is that?
I wouldn't say networking is like helpful for getting into law school, but I think it's really helpful for getting like as much as you can out of law school. Like, networking is how you're able to connect with your peers in law school and upperclassmen and your faculty. And networking is going to help you get internships. Networking is going to help you get term time internships and externships. But I don't think it's really as much networking that can help you to get in the front door, if that makes sense.
Oh no, I was alluding to while you're in law school, in that sense capacity.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I would also flag that I think like the way that people talk about and think about networking, it sounds very like artificial, and it sounds very like, I have to think up some question I want to ask this person that I'm not actually interested in asking. But it's really just like, oh, I want to get to know these people who are in this world with me or practicing, in a world I'd like to be in. And it like genuinely people I want to connect with to learn and grow and like vibe. And that's when it's, I think, most like, effective or actually beneficial.
You want to get connected to practicing lawyers in your field to the extent that you can. And that's, something that obviously is going to be sort of strategic, but it's also something that you're likely to just by virtue of pursuing your own interest, going to connect yourself to. I would say one thing about your classmates is that you find out things in your career about the existence of a job you might apply for because your classmate knows about it. and things like that become very helpful to you. So being a social person in law school can have that kind of benefit. Not that you should be, mercenary about your friendships.
It is absolutely incredible how much I have gained just from being around people who are doing the same thing as me, because everyone's getting information from about different, there's so much going on a lot of times that there's no way for you yourself to keep track of everything. So just having other people around you, like just solely for in New York, you have to take the New York law exam before you can take the bar exam. NYU does not do a great job of telling you this. Maybe I'm not on the right email chain, but like if I didn't have friends who were preparing to take the New York bar exam who were like, "Hey, have you taken the NYLE?" And I was like, "What is the NYLE?" I would just like have not taken it and not been able to take the bar exam. So there's so many examples, and I'm sure like I would have received some kind of email at some point. I would have figured it out. But like there's a lot of things just like that you really having people is so important.
Some other questions in the chat. One about for those of us planning to take the LSAT this summer, what is a good way to balance classes this semester while also studying? I don't know. Would people want to take a shot at that? And anyway, people want to, if anyone has put something in the chat that they want to pose orally, that might be the most helpful. Linus.
Hi again, everyone. Are there any undergrad classes that you think will be helpful in relation to the LSAT?
Philosophy classes. I feel that I took I took 2 in undergrad. But I found that the thinking required in philosophy classes translates really well to the thinking that you have to do on the LSAT. It's just very different than like the type of analysis I had to do as a political science major. I feel like the skills required in analyzing texts such as philosophy is pretty similar to the analysis and way of thinking that you have to have on the LSAT. So I would say take some philosophy classes.
In that vein, informal logic is a type of philosophy class, and it is the type of logic used in philosophy. And it was single-handedly the most helpful class that I took for the LSAT, because it breaks down how to think about in a logical way, I guess.
Yeah, I totally agree. Philosophy classes and any like critical thinking courses, those are going to help a lot. I took Intro to Critical Thinking at Wayne State my freshman year, and it was incredibly helpful for the LSAT. There's a section of the LSAT, I think maybe they got rid of it now, the logic games, and it relies on critical thinking and breaking down logic questions and doing it in a quick and efficient way. That course was really helpful for that. So I recommend it. And also, yeah, philosophy classes, political science courses I found were helpful. I took Professor Roth's Justice course. I don't know if that course is still there, if there's a sort of similar subject, but those courses in the political science department can be really helpful. I'm in constitutional law right now, so a lot of things that I've learned just throughout the years of in government courses has been helpful for that class too.
Thanks, guys.
There's a question in the chat about which extracurriculars are helpful for law school applications. I don't know if anyone wants to take a shot at that.
Me and Stuart were on Student Senate. He was actually my president at the time. But I feel like something like Student Senate that showcases that you have a drive for advocacy, because a lot of the work done on Student Senate, you're doing work for the student body. And I talked about my experiences on my law school applications, and I feel advocacy translates really well to law because that's essentially what you're doing. And so anything that that in a way ties to what you do fundamentally through the legal field would be helpful, and anything that showcases like leadership, good communication skills, I recommend.
I would recommend, honestly, anything, yeah, that kind of shows that you serve your community. I mean, student senate, that would be awesome. Or just an organization that is, you know, philanthropy based. Law schools really like to see some form of community service. Or, I mean, really just getting something that shows that you're involved in leadership is really good. Like I was in a sorority, and within the sorority, I held the position of parliamentarian, so I did bylaw review and all of that, and I reviewed like our sorority's constitution. And then I was also like just fun things that kind of set you apart. Like I was the vice president of the figure skating club at Wayne State. So just anything that kind of showcases who you are and showcases that you're interested in the law and that you have a good heart.
A quick piggyback just to say that please, please, please don't pick an extracurricular just for your law school application. Like it is so obvious. It's more obvious than people think when you read a resume or a personal statement, and it's clear that you did something just to do something rather than doing something that you were actually interested and passionate about. And that's what's going to actually help you, in a job interview, like where you're speaking from the heart about something you actually enjoyed and cared about doing.
Malit, is that pronouncing it right?
Yes, you're pronouncing it right. In regards, considering how rigorous your first year of law, how important is it to balance studying with your like social life and trying to find free time for something that you want to do?
It's colossal. It's so important to take care of yourself and remind yourself that you know, taking care of yourself is the priority and making sure that you're happy and healthy is huge. I had in my first semester an issue with my appetite where like I think the stress of school would make me, you know, not eat as much, and I was like, oh, I can have a meal like once I get all my work done. And what you quickly find is like once you're hungry and your, you know, energy starts dropping, it gets harder and harder to pay attention to what you're reading. And eventually the sentence you just read goes right over your head. So it's huge to take a break, you know, even just stretching, you're sitting down a lot and you know, doing a lot of reading. It's crucial to do something that you love, getting outside, hanging out with friends, playing basketball or soccer or some other activity that you enjoy doing. It's definitely something that I've been learning since I've started, and just having a bit of balance. But it takes time and you know, trial and error trying to balance everything that you want while you're in law school.
To Oliver's point, my school at the beginning of it like stressed like make a study schedule, and like they made us all make one and like submit it. And I was just like just typed whatever and like submitted it. And you quickly find out like you have to have a study schedule and stick to it because there's so much material and so much that you have to absorb it and learn, and you have to balance like your mental health with um like what you need to accomplish. And so uh you want to be able to like put time towards like friends and family if you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, be able to like kind of be there for them, but you have to have enough time that you can do what you need to do. But I've heard that's a common thing where the easiest thing to neglect when you're stressed out or overloaded is you just don't eat, and then yeah, you'll suffer. Just like trying to get stuff done, you won't have energy, you won't be able to concentrate, and you think you're helping yourself and you're not. So it's like creating a study schedule, sticking to it, so that you can accomplish everything that you need to do in the amount of time that you actually have.
To echo that point, my 1L year was really tough for me because I knew that I was interested in transferring, so I felt like there's a lot of pressure. And I think that obviously like law school has to be one of your top priorities. And it'll insert itself into that position without you doing much anyway. But I think that what was really helpful for me is I put in my head, okay, I am going to stay at the library until X time every night after classes. Um, and usually people would stay with me so I wouldn't be alone. So I was getting social interaction. I was eating at the school and things like that. And then I would do that during the week. And then on the weekend, I really tried to limit myself to, if not both days, no schoolwork, at least one day where there's no law related work. And that was my day to decompress, spend time with my partner, spend time with my family, do some kind of physical exercise. I was also like doing physical exercise during the week, but I think that was really helpful having that carved out time and having that to look forward to, and sometimes it would get a little bit much. Um, and I think remembering that it's temporary, like you are maybe in this like law school box for a little bit, but it's not, things get a lot easier in my experience after 1L. You get into a rhythm, you kind of know what to expect. And this, I think the single most important thing for me was getting sleep. I don't think I would ever do myself any favors by staying up. It was more important than having a great social life or than studying late nights. Getting 8 hours of sleep. I had a Fitbit, I tracked it. I needed the sleep, and that's when your brain is healing and preparing itself. So
Super, super briefly that some advice I would receive before I started law school was, treat this like a 9 to 5. And I think, I came in with a bit of that intention, but I really like neglected to dedicate and budget for time to just, get to know my classmates. And like some of my classmates are my best friends. And actually really, valuable to spend time going to bar review, getting to know your classmates, like having fun with them, but making that a priority too.
bar review is not studying for the bar exam. It's when everyone goes to the bars and has fun.
There's bar review and then there's bar review, yeah. So we've got one more hand up from Khalil, and then I think we'll make that the last question. And
Yes.
so Khalil.
Yeah, sorry. So how do you guys like potentially deal with the potential ethical problems that you deal with in law school, like in practice or in theory? Do you guys feel like, because it seems like right now, listening to you guys, that the law schools really heavily rely on the academic performance. And given that, it's a 3-year law school, start to practice soon, that you guys are going to be out in the real world, do you feel like your law schools are adequately preparing you guys to be ethical? Because we hear from time to time, especially with Professor Roth's class, with the like the torture memos. Sometimes lawyers are not so ethical. So do you guys feel like they adequately prepare you guys for that and not lose yourselves?
I would say, at least for my school, the ABA started a new class. We call it successful lawyer class, but it basically goes over all the you go through all the unethical, like recent like lawyer like huge cases, and you go through and you're like they discuss how to like deal with stress, how you like should treat a situation if a client wanted to do something that isn't right. Um, based they're just like trying to teach you how to be like a zealous advocate, but at the same time like not do something completely unethical. And then you have to take a class that's required by the another class required by the ABA, which you have to test for eventually, but you go through all your personal responsibilities and what you're supposed to do so that you can actually keep your license and not go to law school and incur this debt and not be able to practice and get debarred. So, um, yeah, I mean, I think my school prepares well, but I mean, others might be different.
I think one of the things I've enjoyed most about law school is the classes that lend themselves a little bit more to theory and discussing, you know, yes, this is how the law works, but should it work like that? And what is our role as lawyers in enforcing and playing into this system that has these laws that are not necessarily always just, or laws that are just, but that don't function in a just way or in an equitable way. And I think I think most law, as far as I've only been to 2 law schools, but both of them address that. And law students in general tend to be the type of people who think a lot about these kinds of things. And I think when you're put in a position of power, which a law degree does put you in a position of power, and I think it's important to recognize that. It is really important to think about how you're going to wield that power, what you're going to platform, how your actions will impact other people. Um, and I think that I have seen a lot of really good, reassuring things from fellow students and from professors who encourage those kinds of conversations um, at both Wayne Law and at NYU Law. And I'm hopeful that that is the case across law schools. So that's what I've got.
I'm gonna hop off just a couple minutes early because they're kicking me out of my study room. But thank you so much, everyone who came. I had so much fun.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for all of you.
Yeah. Well, this is a good moment to just thank everyone, and I will stay on with whoever wants to hang out for a bit after turning off the recording. But once again, thank you for so generously giving of your time for this, and it will be of help to people not only in the Zoom room but online afterwards, since it'll be posted. So thank you. And good night to all of you who will be leaving us. I'll turn off the recording.